Welcome back to the online tutorial on PIAAC data analysis. This is the second part of our literature overview of applied PIAAC-based research in economics. In the first part, we looked at classic education and labor market-related questions that we can answer using the full PIAAC data. Now it is time to dive into different subsamples of PIAAC. As we have explored already, the age range from 16 to 65 is one of the great advantages of PIAAC, even though PIAAC is not a panel. Due to the large sample size, it is possible to zoom in on specific parts of this age range. One group of interest consists of early career workers. In his 2021 paper, Arellano Bover focuses on young people and their first job. Specifically, he looks at the selection into large companies. Who manages to land their first job at a big firm? In an analysis based on 31 countries, he finds positive selection into large firms. Young people with higher cognitive skills, PIAAC trademark, and more education are more likely to work for a large firm. However, due to PIAAC's international character, he is also able to pinpoint interesting differences between Europe and other continents. In this paper, we can see that PIAAC allows researchers to pick out very specific groups of workers that they are interested in. Cognitive skills are used as a key observable worker characteristic that selection into large firms is based on. And despite zooming in on a specific group of workers, PIAAC still has enough power to estimate selection into the large firms in this particular research context. Now, let's move on from young workers who have just left the education sector to their former teachers. To address the question of what makes a good teacher, Hanuszek, Piopunik, and Wiederhold look at the role of teachers' cognitive skills. They estimate the relationship between teacher skills and student performance in a sample of 31 PIAAC countries and find that teacher skills are indeed strongly related to student outcomes. Here, the authors make use of the different PIAAC skill domains, numeracy and literacy. So instead of just focusing on one, they incorporate both of these skill dimensions, and they use in one of their approaches between subject and within country variation in teacher skills. Now, this paper differs from the papers we have previously discussed in that it is not a purely PIAAC-based paper. Instead, it combines the teacher skill measures from PIAAC with the student's performance measure from PISA. And this shows how well PIAAC can work in combination with other data sets from the OECD and beyond. And you may ask yourself, how do they identify teachers in PIAAC? Well, that is once again based on the occupational information that we have available in PIAAC so that we know which type of job people are working in. And being a teacher is one of these categories. Another interesting detail that you can find in this paper is that the authors use Canada specifically as a benchmark because the sample size in PIAAC Canada is actually significantly larger than in other countries. Now, this benchmarking approach may be useful in a variety of settings, and it may even be useful in your research setting. So this is an interesting fact to know about PIAAC Canada and how it can be useful as a benchmark due to the large sample size. Another very popular subsample in PIAAC is the sample of migrants. Many PIAAC countries provide information on first and second generation migrants, such as the country of birth or the language spoken at home. to study the role of culture, specifically individualism, in human capital formation. My co-authors, Sven Rosnianski, Jens Ruhose, Simon Wiederhold, and I used the cultural variation generated by migrants from different cultural origins within the same destination country. We assign each migrant in 22 PIAAC countries their origin country individualism score. And based on that, we find a strong positive effect of individualism on numeracy skills and labor market outcomes. Now, in an ongoing project, I build on that to find positive effects on innovation-conducive behaviors, such as occupational selection and behavior on the job. Now, these two papers are another example of making use of the entire range of outcomes available in PIAAC, from the cognitive skills and the classic education measures to occupational information, wages, and even behavior on the job. No matter what you're working on, it is always worth checking the PIAAC background questionnaire and be inspired by the variety of items and outcomes available in there. Now, if you're interested in studying migrants, these two papers may be a great resource for you. However, please note that our research here is not studying migration-related questions, even though we use the variation in culture generated by migrants. Many migration-related research questions actually call for panel data. So be aware of the limitations of PIAAC as a cross-sectional data set, as well as the potential of PIAAC. Independent of migration, the papers are also an interesting resource for those who want to use PIAAC Germany, the German PIAAC panel, PIAAC-L, because we use that in a value-added framework. And the region information in PIAAC is also used for region-level analyses, so that may also be useful for you. While the previous papers mentioned here take an international perspective, there are also many papers who look at migrants in one specific destination country. In one example, Richwine looks at the migrant-native wage gap in the United States and relates that to differences in marketable cognitive skills. Indeed, the author finds that skills explain a large share of the wage gap, even among people with similar formal education backgrounds. So this is yet another example for the value added by the PIAAC skill measures compared to, for instance, years of schooling, which is used as a traditional education measure. Okay, with that in mind, we have zoomed in on the United States and are now flying over to Germany, the only country with a PIAAC panel. Remember that in PIAAC-L, respondents were resurveyed and retested with respect to their cognitive skills. Now, this skills panel has enormous potential and has thus far arguably been underused in economic research. Even though it only covers only one country, do not underestimate PIAAC-L. It combines repeated skill measures with many extra background questions on personality traits and the respondent's general life situation, as well as information on the entire household. It may include the measures that you need to answer your research question. However, before using PIAAC-L, it is important to consider what its value added is in comparison to other panel studies, such as the German socioeconomic panel. Of course, one big argument here are the cognitive skills. Once again, in one PIAAC-L-based paper, Gauli and Lechner look at the relationship between on-the-job training and skills. Does job-related training increase skills, or is it simply the more skilled people who select into training? The authors use PIAAC-L to study this question of timing and find substantial selection into training based on literacy skills, but no increase in skills after training. Now, this is a prime example for making use of the panel nature of PIAAC Germany. In this paper, you can find guidance regarding the data management and use of PIAAC-L. PIAAC Germany has also been used in the survey methodology literature. For instance, Gauli, Deikeler, Gummer, and Ramstedt exploit the fact that PIAAC Germany can be linked to administrative employment data to investigate discrepancies between self-reported and administrative wages. You see, there are a lot of potential applications for PIAAC-L in applied economic research. And do not forget that you can also use PIAAC-L in combination with the international PIAAC data. For instance, to investigate one specific mechanism or use one specific identification strategy that needs variation across time, like we have seen in the migration paper we discussed. However, we will see another example for that in the next chapter when we look at estimating causal effects using PIAAC data. Thank you for joining part 2 of this tutorial. Part 3 is waiting for you already.